The test will begin on the word start. On your mark, get ready, start.
Welcome to We Regret to Inform You, a college admissions podcast by students for students. I'm Connor.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Saad.
This week, we're doing a special profile on Brown University. Our guest is Max Kozlov, a student and tour guide at Brown. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's really exciting to be on this podcast, and I've listened through some of your other stuff, and I appreciate that you've had this podcast running. A little introduction. I am Max. I'm a rising junior here. I'm studying cognitive neuroscience, and I'm from Newton, Massachusetts, right outside Boston. And I'm a first-gen student here. I've been involved in a lot of different stuff on campus, done some research. I give lots of tours, info sessions. I am involved with the outing club, getting outdoors. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. So
yeah, no problem.
All right, so Max, I understand that your major may be a little bit different from other people's majors, but in general, what do you think the workload is like at an Ivy League or elite school such as Brown?
Yeah, so I mean, I can only comment, of course, about my own major and my experience, what it's been like here at Brown so far. I can try to touch upon other majors that I know some of my friends are doing, but in terms of cognitive neuroscience, it falls in the mid-range in terms of requirements to graduate Brown. So like a general thing about Brown is, of course, that we have the open curriculum. So there's no general education requirements that you're gonna be having here. So cognitive neuroscience has 16 requirements of their around 32 classes that you're doing here. So around like half of our classes for people doing cognitive neuroscience are going to be in the cognitive neuroscience like department. Or at least like they're going to be pretty structured. And from my experience, what I love about my major is that there's a very big variety of classes that I'll be taking. I've taken some bigger lecture classes. I've taken a class, Introduction to Neuroscience, which is 300 people. But at the same time, I've also taken some seminars, which have been some of my favorite classes that I've taken here, which are like 15 people in the same department. And the classes are going to vary in terms of workload, whether it's a lecture-based class, to if it's a lab-based class, to if it's a discussion-based class. So, I mean, on a typical nightly basis, I probably find myself doing work maybe 3 hours a night is pretty typical. It definitely ramps up a little bit more around midterm and final season. But I have to say, overall, this might surprise you a little bit, but I feel like I was more overall stressed out and busy in high school.
Would you say that basically the overall stress level of Brown it's pretty low? It's not something that we would really need to be worried about?
Yeah, and like I said, I can only attest to Brown, and will you find students that are stressed out here? I'm sure the answer is yes. This isn't a utopia, unfortunately. But what I do know is that with the way that the curriculum is set up here and the way that the grading policies are structured, that is one of the key reasons that I applied to Brown early decision. I come from a pretty competitive high school. I went to a public high school in Eastern Mass. So, most of those students are going to end up at a post-secondary education institution. Most people go off to college. And so I was kind of sick of what'd you get after every test that I ever took. I was sick of working with people on projects that were super unmotivated, that were kind of just taking the class to graduate because you're told exactly what classes you're taking in high school. And so it was a real relief to come to Brown's campus and to see a student body that didn't have a blanket of stress over it. I know that, I'm not going to name any other schools here, but, some schools I visited, I definitely felt like this overwhelming like almost not sadness. That's just sad. But I definitely felt students were stressed out at other schools, and with the fact that there's no pluses or minuses at Brown, the standard grading option here is A, B, C, no credit. So the standard for passing a class is higher. There's no D's here, but there's no pluses or minuses. So you're not fighting for that last percentage point to go from like a 96 to 97 and losing like hours of sleep because of that. A lot of the emphasis here is on the learning, which I really appreciate.
As far as all that high school stuff you mentioned, amen?
Yes, please.
So you would generally say that the atmosphere there is non-competitive and more like people want to work together to achieve those higher grades instead of comparing them to each other?
Yeah, and what the phrase that you're going to hear admissions officers using a lot here is you're the architect of your own education, which is too flowery for my taste. But I mean, it's true. It's true in the sense that like you're going to be the one that's calling the shots basically from the day you get here. But because of that, because you can take if you're an engineer, you can take art classes. If you're a mathematician, you can take psychology classes. Like every single person that's here at Brown goes on a completely different academic path. So it almost doesn't make sense to compare yourself against other students here because everybody is doing something so different. Even somebody like within your major, the 30, 32 classes that they're going to be taking are going to be probably completely different than your own. So I would say like qualities of Brown students is that they're very self-motivated, they're very driven, and we celebrate, each other, but there's not like this toxic environment of people like bringing each other down that I remember so vividly from high school.
That's awesome. So what in that sort of sense, then what's the social life like in general? If as you say, you don't really compare yourselves to each other, but what's the social life outside of school there
Sure.
at Brown, I guess?
In terms of, are you curious in terms of like, what it's like what the general scene is like, on like a
how
Friday,
do people have,
Saturday?
what do people do on their weekends or when they have free time,
Sure.
generally when
Sure.
they're not studying?
Yeah. It's nice that we're in Providence. It's nice that we're in like a city. It's not a very big city, but it's definitely, it has a lot of its own charm, and it is like it is a sizable city. We have like 180,000 people. But Boston is super close by. It's just like an hour away on the train, and New York City is like a $30 bus ticket. So like I was in New York City this past weekend, and a lot of students like to go to Boston for the weekend for like a concert. I've definitely done that before. So like, I mean, during the day or like on the weekend, I might go with some friends to like, there's a lot of like food truck festivals that happen in the area. There's like big festivals that happen in general, like downtown. Like there's a big theater festival that happens like for a week every summer. There's a Providence Fest where there's just like people are dancing on the streets and one big dance party downtown. So I've been to stuff like that. I might do something with the Brown Outing Club, which I mentioned I was a part of earlier. So we like take trips to like a nearby like state park or like going up to the White Mountains for the day. So I've been involved with that. In terms of like the nightlife, which I'm sure you're all wondering about, there is Greek life on campus. It's one of those things that some people are part of, but it's not like it doesn't dominate the social scene. Again, I'm not going to mention schools, but like at some other schools, including some of the other Ivy League schools, it's kind of like if you want to be part of it, it's there for you. But so sometimes those Greek organizations will have like a social event. Actually, like probably most Friday, Saturday nights, there's at least one of those going on. But otherwise, students here can live off campus. And so sometimes my friends will just have some people over. In general, there's like some house parties that people host. There's, Providence, like I said, is a city, so there are actually a good amount of bars and clubs downtown. So some students like to take part in that scene here. But I mean, otherwise, I feel like, what's nice is I'm friends with people who are cognitive neuroscientists. I'm friends with people who are engineers, who are business majors, and it's really cool to hear what my friends are doing, and all the insane projects that they're working on. Yeah, so the social life here overall is there's so many different niches, so many different clubs, and overall it's a very laid back. It's not a very high strung place, from my experience.
So kind of a theme that I've been hearing you bring up is sort of it's a choose your own destiny school, right? Both in terms of the social aspects, there's stuff to do for everybody, but also in terms of academic aspects, right? Is that something that's fair to say, that it's choose your own destiny in every sort of way?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the Browns big selling point. It's almost everything every decision you make here is going to be coming from you. Whether that's a club you're part of, so what you're doing on the weekends, what you're studying. And I mean, and it's not just, you're not completely on your own here. Some of my favorite classes I've discovered because of shopping period during that 2-week period at the beginning of each semester. We are able to kind of try out any class that we want, and usually I try out 8 to 12 different classes. It doesn't mean I'm taking all of those classes all at once. Usually there's not as much work that first week, but you can get a flavor for what the professor is doing. And some of those classes I've discovered just because my friend offhandedly said, Max, there's this anthropology class going on. Will you come with me to it? And some of my favorite classes I found that way.
Wait, so you're telling me that if I go to Brown, I can spend the first 2 weeks just trying classes?
That's right. Yeah, it's shopping period, man. It's a lot of colleges have ad drop periods, but Brown students really take advantage of it. People always ask me what classes I'm taking for the fall, and my friends get kind of frustrated with me because I'll list off 8, 10 classes because I want to make sure that I vibe with the professor. I want to make sure that the assignments don't all conflict with each other. I want to make sure that I like the structure of the class, and so I won't know really what classes I'm taking until the second week of the semester.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's one big perk of being a student at Brown. What would you say is the best part of being a student at Brown? What part of Brown has come closest to meeting your expectations?
Great question. So I mean the open curriculum has to be the main reason that I chose Brown. I mean, and the open curriculum and the kind of people it attracts also is another big thing. And for all the way that Brown advertises itself, that students get free reign here. I've really been able to experience that here. Another thing that I liked about Brown that I noticed that I was pleasantly surprised with is the in general, how much academic risk you can take here, and failure is a part of every student's experience. I think that in high school and college I've experienced that, but here at Brown the stakes are a little bit lower. They want to incentivize you to take academic risk. So whether that's taking a class during shopping period, trying something out, whether that's taking a class pass-fail, satisfactory, no credit, that's another option if something is just outside your comfort zone and you want to try something out. And another interesting thing is if you get below a C, that is if you get a no credit, or if you drop a class halfway or whenever you during the semester, it will not go in your external academic transcript. So I've been able to, like I said, like really take advantage of that and take some like really cool, crazy classes that I didn't even like. I took like an English class, and I thought that I would be done with English class after high school. I thought I would never have to do it again, and now I've taken probably like three in the last 2 years. But it's nice knowing that, you know, if it doesn't work out well, or if it proves to be kind of too challenging, that it won't follow me around forever.
So a philosophy major can choose to take a high-level math class because they're interested in it, and they don't have to worry about having an F on the transcript.
Exactly. That's what I mean. That you can, like, there's a lot of like academic risk you can take here, and that's how you discover new classes and new concentrations that way.
So, as you said before, although Brown is great, it's no utopia. So what would you say is a potential drawback of studying at Brown? Or what else would you say is also a part that didn't really meet your expectations, or was just plain out different from your expectations?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that I'm going to mention is kind of specific, but I'll mention it anyway because it is probably like one of my least favorite parts about Brown. So with housing, first year housing, you get a random roommate. Worked out well for me. My roommate's name was Jacob Jonathan Jackson. Shout out to you, Jake. Great stuff. But then after that, you have something called the housing lottery, and that's similar to how a lot of schools do it. It's, you know, you can either enter by yourself with a group of friends. You get a number for your group, and that's when you can go in and choose housing. Pretty standard stuff. My criticism of it is, a few years ago, the Office of Residential Life like made the switch from having an in-person housing lottery to an online, which I prefer a lot, because can you imagine like it's basically like a Hunger Games, like having an in-person housing lottery. But my criticism of it is that there's still not a lot of resources, a lot of like clear, concise resources about how that process works. So I wish I kind of knew like more about like how, like some tips and strategies for doing the housing lottery, and they have some like annoying, like not criteria, but like constraints on like how big your group can be, and do you want to have an even numbered group, not an odd numbered group, and stuff like that. That was just a little bit frustrating to navigate. You know, when it comes to academics though, I have very few criticisms. You know, I'm glad that, you know, the main criticism I have of Brown is in the housing regard. The other thing I will say though, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, I'm actually writing a piece about this, and I think it has to do partly with our public school education, or not public school, our secondary education, how it's structured these days. But it's been really hard to go from a place in high school where you're taking so many different classes. You're taking, you know, like usually 6, 7 different classes at most high schools. And at least, I don't know about you all, but I know that I kind of did work to get it out of the way. You know, you have like a bio lab report. Oh man, I have to bang out this 4-page paper and then switch over to like doing like the Spanish busy homework for the night. Yeah, seriously, it's and that's part of the reason why I think that high school is harder in terms of doing work than college in a lot of respects, is because you have so many disparate classes going on, and they all kind of have busy work every night. But it's hard to go from an environment like that to an environment like Brown's, where you know, it's very hands off, and you're kind of like, they say go for it. Because like I'm almost used to like hating work. I'm used to thinking about work as a chore, and it's hard to go to a place where you know, now you can take classes that you actually like, and you can like explore things that you actually want to do, which is a crazy concept, because in high school I definitely didn't have that. And because of that, I still feel like I'm like doing a lot of my work that I'm doing, I still feel like I have to just get it out of the way, if that makes sense. And maybe you can, I don't know if you have a similar experience in high school.
No offense to people who do like foreign languages, because I can see how they're interesting to some people, but just the fact that I had to basically do 3 years of Spanish to look competitive and well-rounded to admissions officers is just like it kills you inside a little bit because I just like I just don't care about it that much. So I guess part of the Brown experience that appeals to me and I imagine a lot of other people who will be applying is just the fact that it is stuff that you are actually academically interested in and stuff that you actively want to learn more about. And I feel like that's basically what you've been saying.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe this is more of a criticism of the college applications process and of high school these days than it is of Brown. I think, I just feel like we're kind of put into this mindset for 13 years and it's hard to get out of it. But I know that that's something I've struggled with. But like I said, I'm happy that, Brown, like I'm adjusting to it. I'm a rising junior. I still have 2 more years left. And I'm happy to be in an environment that has an open curriculum that, now I can actually take a step back and think about what I'm interested in and take really cool classes. And one statistic that always blows my mind is, even though that we don't have a core curriculum, like 90% of people, 90% of students here still do what would be a core curriculum at another school, but they make that choice to do so. And like as somebody who studies, neuroscience and psychology, I think that there's going to be a huge difference in how motivated you're going to be in class, whether you're told to take a class or if you choose to take that class.
So I have one more question academically, personally for me, which is that have you actually taken advantage of the pass-fail system, and how many people actually do?
Good
I know
question.
it's sort of unique to Brown.
Yeah, I definitely have. So the statistic is that 1 in 6 students take a class, or sorry, students take 1 in 6 classes, SNC, satisfactory, no credit, or pass fail, in other words. So, there's no quota, there's no limit to how many classes you can take. Could you take all of your classes SNC? Yeah, but don't get any ideas because, that's probably not a great idea in the grand scheme of your future. But it's usually around like 1 in 6 classes that people do SNC. And to give you a little anecdote about the time that I have, my very first semester at Brown, this is actually a class that I was talking about earlier. My friend was like, Max, come with me to this anthropology class. It was called Bioethics and Culture. And it was a super cool class. The professor was great. She drew me in right from the first lecture. The problem was though that 70 students were there for a 20-person class that first day. So I was like, well, damn, I don't think that, I'm going to have a spot in this class, especially as a first semester, first year. I went on the second day, there were 40 people. Third day, there were 20 people. Awesome. Nice. So that's what happens during shopping period is, a lot of people come on the first and second days, but then, as people figure out what classes they want to take, usually, things iron themselves out. But, awesome, I got a spot in the class, but the funny thing was that the other 19 people in the class in this, small discussion-based class were all seniors. And not only were they seniors, but they were seniors concentrating in anthropology. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they were super daunting. They were throwing around huge words like personhood, moral experience, and I knew what these words meant in isolation, but definitely not in the context of what they were saying. So I was very confused. So you can probably see where this story is going. I took the class SNC because I still wanted to be surrounded by this really amazing professor and these super knowledgeable students, but I didn't want to feel like I was in competition with these other students in class. I didn't feel like I had to compare myself. And so I'm glad that I was able to get all of the knowledge from the class, still do all the assignments, but again, take a class at slightly lower stakes because it is a little bit outside my comfort zone. There's no such thing as, at least in my high school, as an anthropology class in high school. But yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's kind of transition. I want to transition to a little bit of a different topic, which is sort of reputation based, which is how do you feel to have the title of being a student at an Ivy League school? And do you think that it takes something special to earn this title? And if so, what did you do?
Yeah, so you have to save at least 2 babies, cure cancer, at least one type of cancer. So I saw this question on Reddit, and it actually surprised me that it was, I think, the most upvoted comment
It was.
of all of the questions.
It was.
So
Shout out to whoever submitted that comment, but it surprised me because so I know this isn't exactly how this works. It's true that Brown is a Ivy League school, and I know that I don't get to really choose whether it does or does not have that title. But in terms of the grand scheme of identities I carry, I would say that an Ivy League student is one of the last things that I identify with. And like I said, I know that's not how it works. I know that's something that's bestowed upon me just by attending the school. But like when to give you an example of what I mean, when I was visiting schools, I didn't look at any of the other Ivy League schools. I lived 15 minutes from Harvard's campus, never once toured Harvard. Also, screw Harvard. But
screw Harvard. I live a train ride from Harvard, and I'm not gonna look at it. I don't care.
It's been said. No, so like I really when I was looking at schools, I does reputation matter? Is reputation important? Of course it is. In the end result. But I wasn't looking at Brown because it was an Ivy League school. I was looking at Brown for all the things that I've already mentioned. I really liked the environment of the students here. I like the open curriculum. So am I fortunate to have this title of being an Ivy League student? Of course I am. I'm very grateful. I know that I'm sure it's going to be helpful in looking for post Brown opportunities. But like I said, I don't feel elevated in any way. And like I said, that's not the first thing that I say when, I don't, go around saying, yes, I go to an Ivy League school. I say I'm a student at Brown. So what does it take to earn this title, and what did I do? I heard y'all talking about this earlier. I've really come to work with a lot of the admissions officers by being a tour guide here for the last year and a half, and they're all completely different, and it's a different, it's kind of a coin flip as to who is going to be reading your application and how they're feeling that day. And I can only speak about Brown again and not other Ivy League schools, but I know that in terms of Brown, they're looking for students who will actually take advantage of the open curriculum. So if you are, if you want to double major in biomedical engineering and math, I don't even know if that's possible or not, because those are such big concentrations. But if you are set and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life, Brown might not be the place for you, to be honest. There's a lot of 2,400 or whatever it is, 1,600 these days, 4.0 GPA people that admissions officers don't accept because, again, they're looking for people who are willing to step outside their comfort zone, who are driven, who are self-motivated, who are passionate. So if you, in terms of Brown, if that sounds like you, if you have many different interests and you're into exploring them, or at least attempting to explore them, I think it's a great place. And in whatever way you can show that on your application, I think that's going to be the most helpful. I know that I personally, Connor, you went on my tour, but I think a unique thing that I did was I worked at the Museum of Science in Boston. And one of the things that I did while I worked there is I dressed in a bee costume.
The bee thing comes back.
I was about to ask, what's with you and bees?
Yeah, somebody even commented, I saw on the Reddit thread,
is that the bee guy?
Ask it. Yeah.
Is that the bee guy? It is the bee guy.
So it's funny.
Where did you come up with the idea to specifically dress up as a bee?
No, I didn't come up with that idea. It was actually because I worked in a little kids exhibit. It's called the Discovery Center for 0 to 8-year-olds and their caregivers. And one of the things that they have there is a fantasy play section, because kids learn very well from pretend play and from dressing up and from pretending that their dolls are real people and stuff like that.
I'm 17.
Hit me up if you want that bee costume. No, So it was just like one of the things that they had there, and I was actually not even my first choice to work in that exhibit, but I really came into my role there. I really went all in, and one of the things was to dress in a bee costume, and so I did. I'd like buzz around with the kids. I teach them how bees make honey. We'd go scouting for nectar and stuff like that. But it's funny that that this person on the Reddit thread was like, yeah, the bee kid. And it's funny that you all were calling me the bee guy because I eventually ended up writing my admissions essay, my Common App essay about dressing up like a bee at the Museum of Science. And I met with my admissions officer before I was a student here. There was like an opportunity to to meet the person who read your application, and he I go up to him. I don't even say a word. He looks at my name tag. He looks back at my name, back at my face. Looks at my name tag, and he's like, "You're the bee kid." I was literally known as bee kid to the admissions committee at Brown. So I think that that was a unique story, and I think that it was something silly. I wrote about something really odd, something I was very passionate about. So the advice that I always give to people on my tour is, you don't have to write about this life-changing moment you had when you were on the bus and you discovered Nirvana. I don't know.
I know that's what mine's gonna be.
But if you did, you should probably write about that.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Exactly. No, that's pretty sad if you discovered Nirvana the band in 2018.
Amazing.
Only,
you don't have to
only
cure
20 years past the prime. It's okay.
You don't have to cure cancer or something like that. I wrote about this unique experience, and I think that it vibed with the admissions officer. That's why I think how I came to. That's why I can call myself a Brown student. But like I said, again, I don't really identify that much with being an Ivy League student.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we've gotten through all of the community questions that we had on the Reddit. So now we just have, we originally had 5 questions that we were going to ask, and we pared it down to 3. So the first one that I'm just going to ask you is, although the virtual tour, which is hosted by you, does allow students to experience a walkthrough of the Brown campus, how would you describe the actual feeling of being there? How would you tell someone who couldn't physically make it or doesn't really get the full experience from the virtual tour how it looks and how it feels?
Yeah, so the virtual tour, Brown was kind of late to the game, I think, for having a virtual tour. I'm glad we have it now. And the main reason why we have it is because, not all students are able to make it all the way to Providence to actually be on campus. So I think, the pictures are they somehow made them absolutely beautiful. The 360 that they have on the tour are surreal almost. But in terms of the actual content of the stuff that I'm saying, it was purposefully very vague because they didn't want the information to age, because they wanted to, to have the virtual tour for a while and not have to refilm it. So in terms of the content, I would say that almost none of what I say on the virtual tour is what I actually say on the actual tour, and that the actual tour is definitely, if you're able to, it's a great, it's going to be a much better resource as to what student life is like here and what classes are going to be like here. But again, I think it covers some of the main places where students will be spending their time, where students will be hanging out. It covers areas like the main green, which is what we say is the major student hub on campus. It's this giant green space where on any nice day, even any remotely nice day, students are going to be hanging out, spending time outside. And they cover the campus center and stuff like that. Now, how I describe Brown's campus. So I think Brown is super, super, super lucky, because we were founded at such an early date. Providence wasn't fully formed as a city yet. We have so much space on campus because after all, this is a capital city. This is there's 180,000 people in the city, but despite that, we still have these giant swaths of green space. I know that some other schools in Boston, in New York, I remember visiting them. They don't have a campus. Their campus is the road. So I think
Yeah.
it's nice that we have all of this green space, that we have all of these buildings that students can spend time on. Because as I know it's already clear because I'm part of the outing club, but I like to spend a lot of time outside, and I think that's something that's going to be affecting, the like how the student body is feeling. So that's one main thing. It's nice to have one thing that you really can't find on the virtual tour is how close downtown Providence is. It's legitimately a 5-minute walk down.
I mean,
the
you
hill.
can, it's standing on the campus, you can just straight out see it. Like, it's very, very close.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can see all the buildings in downtown, and I'll have you know that there are skyscrapers, though few in Providence. But like, yeah, you can and there's a lot of restaurants. There's a big Italian neighborhood downtown, so lots of really great Italian food there. Lots of donut shops that you definitely can't find on the virtual tour. Like that's. The food scene in Providence has to be honestly one of my other favorite parts about Providence, and something you definitely can't find on there. We have like an insane amount of restaurants here. And then the other thing you really can't see is Thayer Street, going off of the restaurant thing. But like that's a street that's actually, it runs through the middle of campus. And that's where students like to go to eat off campus. There's like dozens and dozens of restaurants there, cafes where students spend a lot of time. And that's definitely, I would say, a part of my experience of being at the school.
So I feel like this is the most commonly applied early decision college in America. So why did you apply early decision, and why should other people apply early decision to Brown?
I think it's the only Ivy that actually offers ED, isn't it? Maybe Cornell.
No, I think some other Ivies also offer ED, like Cornell. I think, yeah, that one.
Most of them offer CEA. Restricted.
But anyway, so why should you apply early decision to Brown? I mean, if you in listening to this podcast and doing the virtual tour and talking to students, if the open curriculum and if this ability to take academic risk, if that excites you, if you have, if you're completely undecided, or if you have a vague idea of what you want to do, I think Brown is just going to take that that drive that you have and only amplify it. It's only going to make it more strong as you take classes here and meet other students. If you are kind of sick of your high school hyper-competitive environment and you want to go to a place that really values learning and that really like students here, instead of hearing them brag about, oh man, I got a 94.7 on this test, you'll hear students actually be come out of lecture and be like, wow, I learned about this really cool way that humans process language. That was me a few months ago. But seriously, if that appeals to you, I know another main reason I liked Brown is because there are so many students who are involved in extracurricular activities outside of the classroom. I was involved in a lot of extracurriculars in high school, and I know that I valued them just as much, if not even more, than some of the classes that I took in high school. If you want to go to a place that also has a similar feeling toward extracurricular activities and get involved in those, I think Brown's a great place. We're also in, Providence is the capital, and so we have the State House downtown, lots of community organizations that Brown has a hand in. Yeah, that if any of those are appealing to you, definitely apply to Brown. And to be honest, I applied to Brown early decision mostly because I really just wanted to get the college process out of the way. I actually surprisingly didn't I didn't have such strong feelings about Brown until I was actually a student here. I just, like I said, mostly just wanted to be done with it. So if you want to get the college process out of the way, just hit that ED button.
Yeah, I think I will definitely be doing that.
The
So-
two of us.
Yeah, that makes two of us. So are there any final statements about Brown or anything else that you would like to make to any high school students that are listening in today?
So I say this at the very last moment of my tour. I always say if I had one big regret from high school, I think that, I spent too much time on College Confidential, even on Reddit, on r/applying to college, and like going through college websites, going on virtual tours, going on actual tours. If I had one big piece of advice, it's also take some time for yourself this summer and during the year. Don't make this entire summer all about college. Relax a little bit, because the summer, especially between high school and college, is a really unique one. It's like one of those few moments that you're kind of free of anything. So take that time, take advantage of it. But otherwise, I think that's my main advice, and that's really, I think, the only other thing I wanted to say. Did y'all have any other questions for me?
I actually do have a final question for you. However, it is so specific to. It's very specific and long. I think I'm just going to email it to you or write it in the text chat. So. Oh
yeah, no worries. I saw you had some specific questions for me. I'll definitely answer those.
Yeah.
I'll say this to everybody, but I am going to be a student for 2 more years here, and if you have questions, like I invite everybody to email me. My email is super simple. It's just my first name _ my last name at brown.edu. Maxwell _ KOZLOV at brown.edu. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
And we'll put it in wherever we put information for these podcasts, so they can hopefully ask you any questions.
Description box or Reddit post.
Yeah,
you'll see it. We're accompanied along this podcast.
One last piece of advice, I guess, that I just remembered. I visited a lot of my schools over the summer. Connor, I would recommend that you also don't do that, because there's just fewer students here on campus, and it's like the academic environment is just like not very similar to what it is during the academic year. And so I know that I fell into the trap of kind of judging a lot of my schools based on how nice the campus was, because there was nothing else to really judge it by, because you didn't have that student body there. So, if you're able to come during the academic year, so you can see some other students, eat in the dining hall, go to some classes, that kind of thing.
When does the fall semester for Brown this year start?
Starts, so I mean, we have orientation and such for the first week or 2 weeks of September. But I think if you were to come like the 2nd or 3rd week of September, that would be a good time.
All right, I'll write it down in my notes somewhere.
I have a 3-week break in the middle of September, so I'm kind of lucky that way.
Oh my God.
There we go.
All right, well, we'll meet up at Brown, I guess.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So it was very nice talking to you today. Thank you very much for showing up on our podcast. You've been a really valuable source of information, and you've been just a real pleasure to talk to today. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on here.
Thank you for listening to We Regret to Inform You. Don't forget to check out our website at rtiypodcast.weebly.com, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at rtiypodcast. If you have any suggestions, please email us at weregrettoinformyoupodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next episode.